Okay, let's call the select finance committee meeting to order. Are there any late items? Okay, no late items, so let's go to approval of agenda recommendation of the select finance committee meeting agenda for February the 24th, 2021 be approved as circulated. Terry? Jeff? All in favor? Thank you. Adoption of minutes recommended that the minutes of the select finance committee meeting held on December 9th, 2020 be adopted. Malcolm and Ward. All in favor? All right, that was quick. Okay, new business, general operations, and we'll turn it over to Kelly.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm delighted to be here today with everybody, so pretty in pink, we all are. And I'm excited to go over the finances. I provided you a little bit more detail than I have in the past, but I think it's more of a complete picture when it comes to the general operations. So just so you know, I've got in the background some reports, and we can go in as much detail or as little detail as you want when we have our discussions. So I am very intimate with our budget right now, with our prior year actuals. So if you've got any questions relating to numbers, please ask. I am more than happy to answer any of your questions or get back to you on it. With that, I will get started. And we'll start with just the general fund, which is general operation, which is really what affects the tax rate. So I will just get started here. So we're just going to start with a little summary of the revenue. So I know it's a little teeny, but I was trying to get all the information on there. And I know we all have either reading glasses or progressive, so we're good. Okay, so just so everybody knows, a 1% tax increase generates about $45,000 for the district of Sicamous, and the average residential home then would pay an additional $15.88 on their tax bill for the year. Okay, so to put everything in perspective, that's where we stand. So as we go through here, in the past I haven't summarized the revenue, but I think it's important so you can see the whole picture of the municipality. So we'll go through one by one, and I'll just touch on each of them because I don't want to bore anybody in detail, but please stop me if you've got any questions and you want more detail. So municipal taxes, this here represents no tax increase. In there's just over $30,000 of non-market change, so that's additional taxes based on new construction. But there is no tax increase there. And then we'll move on. Water and sewer, this is how much we put on taxes to cover debt payments for the water treatment plant and the sewer extension. So about $250 and $231 each. Then we get some grants in lieu. This is from, what is this from? The ambulance.
The ambulance, the RCFP, the post office, any crowns.
Right, they don't pay us taxes, they pay us basically taxes in lieu. So that's what we get there, general revenue, and it's a little bit more because we never used to get money from the ambulance, but now we are, so that's a little increase there. General government services, so what this is a cost recovery. So we charge the water and the sewer fund for some administration time. So there's a portion of like 10% of my wage, 10% of Wendy's wage, 10% of Joe's, and 10% of Daryl's that gets reallocated over to the water and sewer fund for our general work of it. And then it's just a journal entry, but it's to reallocate it. License permits and fines. So this is building permits, development permits in here, going up from 122 to 137. So I looked at prior actuals, expectations for the future. Our building permits are expected to be up a little bit. So that revenue is up from 2020 is what my expectations are. Rentals 167 to 177. So in here is rent for, let's see, I've got it over here, just so I'll fit it on one page. Here, I'll do that, take those accounts up, you don't need that. Rent for Finlayson, Library, Main Street, Curling Club, Houseboat, Hockey Facility. So there's a bunch of, I can go through the details with you if you want, but that's what's included there, and it's fairly accurate. The Finlayson place in June, we no longer get the rent for the medical clinic. So that's a little change, so there's a decrease there, but we do have some hockey facility revenue. It is an estimate, we'll see how it shakes out. Penalties, interest, it's pretty much the same, comparable, nothing exciting there. Miscellaneous, so that is primarily event and recreation revenue with a bunch of other public works miscellaneous, finance miscellaneous, and miscellaneous, just random stuff. It's down primarily because of recreation and event revenue being down. Unconditional grants, so this is an amount we get every year, and it's called the Strategic Community Investment Fund annual grant, and it's just to all small municipalities under a certain population, and it's just to keep taxes down. So we don't even get anything saying what we're gonna get, we just get the deposit in our account normally in April. And it has been increasing a little bit every year. So that is a nice little amount that I appreciate. And then unconditional grants means we can spend that money on whatever we want. So it just goes, dumps in there, great, let's use it, we're gonna. Conditional grants, we can only use for specific things. So that's why they're conditional. So in this amount, so we have 518. So those are grants, so 252,000 of COVID grant money, which we will discuss. 15K for housing assessment, what else do I have in there? 50,000 for asset management, 36,000 for the completion of the flood mitigation. There's 165 for various CRI wildfire mitigations. And a couple other, I know there's a few other smaller grants that we have out, but if we get the money and we're successful, because it's grant and expense funded, we can just do it without it necessarily being in the budget for some of the smaller ones. Before we get into the COVID grant, I just want to finish off the revenues and then we can get into some details because they're kind of related. And the next is the Community Health Center. So this is just an estimate, which we'll talk about here shortly, for the revenue generated from June 1st to the end of December for the Community Health Center. So that's basically MSP billing. Regional district goes from 129 to 82. Most of that money is for cost recovery functions. So they give us a little bit of money for fire protection, mosquito control, and recreation services. And that's within a service, no, that's not a service establishment bylaw, that's a cost sharing agreement that we have with CSRD. And then it's down because we did get 50,000 for last year for contract services for economic development, not economic development, for events, which we will be getting in 2021. So that's why that 50,000 is down. And then transfer from reserves, I will get into the detail of that here in a second, because I know you are all excited to see what goes back and forth in our reserves. Okay, so that's high level, the revenue. I'm going to go into the grants and the Community Health Center because they're related, unless you have any other questions about any of those grants, any of that income that we generate, which totals about 7.1 for this year.
Any comments?
In the operating fund.
No, we're good, Kelly. Carry on.
Okay, was that too much information? Did I talk too long and bore anybody? Or was that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So now, got it. Okay, so I'm gonna scooch down. So let's first of all talk about the Community Health Center, because it's like, so what I have done for this budget is the executive director for Community Health Center in Kamloops sent us an estimate of what she thought the budget would be. I have Pam Beach's actuals from last year, as well as her projections for future. I have what I know is our cost to be. I have put them all together to try to create the most accurate budget I can for this Community Health Center, with variables still out of our control and I don't know. So these numbers can change. Keeping that in mind. The big thing that I can't put my finger on really is what the revenue will end up by being. I have no idea. I was very, very, very conservative with this budget, meaning I didn't make this revenue very big. So there is potential. This is, I would say, you know, a very conservative budget, and I think we can do better than this, but I also want to be realistic because I don't know. There's still a lot of unknowns. So I don't really want to go into the detail of this unless you guys have any questions. Okay.
Through the chair, thanks. Good job, Kelly. So when I go back and look at the general operating fund summary, you have a note for B. So when you go to B, B's negative. The bottom of B is negative.
Yes.
But you still show it as income coming up there, all 100%. So I don't know what I did for this. I can't like do that on how I have an expense that I haven't settled over the cost of money. And yeah, I have a positive on this.
That's a great question, Councilwoman. So what I've done is I have that 285 is actually the revenue from here.
Yeah.
And then later on, we will show the expenses of 424,000 in the budget. But the revenues in the revenue section, I have the expenses in the expense section. And so the net of 141 goes up and is funded from the COVID grant.
Right.
Right, so that amount that you're seeing in the top piece, is just the revenue. Make sense? Or am I not answering your question?
But you're answering the question, but if you, all I'm saying is that you have an income in here, which is not an income, but it's getting funded from some revenue out of there, and it's getting funded by the COVID grant. And so we'll go back to this a little later. I get what you're trying to do, but in my math book, there's some things in here that aren't going to add up in the future. So when we come to what we're going to do with the taxation, that's where all.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, everybody just remember to speak nice and loud and clear so that the folks zooming in can hear us. Okay, Gord, go ahead and.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, great job, Kelly. I like the new budget format. Just a quick one on the wages. Is that actual wages? Just ballpark? Is that actual wages, or is we kind of guessing?
We are guessing on the wages, but it's a budget and I think it's fairly accurate. We've been asking around in terms of what a manager makes at other ones, and it's normally around that 80 mark with benefits. So that's once we will be doing a press release right after this meeting about the acquisition of the community health center. And because it's out of in camera, we made it out of in camera, but we'll be officially doing the press release today, and then we will be posting for a manager for the community health center. And so that will be this amount. And then MOA administration, we think that's reasonable, knowing what people are making there now, and then part-time receptionist. I think this wage is higher than the current wage that's over there, but we're also paying for a manager. Whereas Pam was doing that, not paying herself as much, you know?
Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you, through the chair. So this is projected out to what, I can't see the dates and the years there, sorry, Kelly.
No, I know. It's
Okay,
lots of
so
things
to
going on.
2025, right?
Correct.
So we have an application in through the primary care network to apply for a sanctioned community health center through Interior Health. And that's a 2-year process. And if we're successful, that would increase our revenues for a community center. So that would lower these numbers after year 2. Is that correct?
Correct. The goal is, you know, in 3 years to be able to break even. That is the goal. We just don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how much revenues we're going to get from anyone. And the fact that we have, for example, the rural locum program, the reason that that's great is because we can bill MSP for those, the locums, so we get the revenue, but there's no expense to us. So those are great. So and we don't know how much revenue that person's going to generate. And you're right, there's more grant opportunity for funding stuff once we are a designated community health center. So yes, we are having to fund this for the next few years, but the plan is to try to make it break even, and that's what the goal of this office manager, that is their role, is to know all the connections, know how to maximize billing, know what our community needs are, and grow that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. These are uncharted waters for us, and you're doing a great job of navigating it, so good job. Any other questions?
Okay, so relating to that is I'll go back here to, so the COVID money, we got $927,000 to go to help subsidize expenses as a result of COVID, or to offset revenues that we are no longer receiving, and anything other kind of COVID related type of stuff, specifically IT as well, recognizing that having access to work in other places than your offices and work. So the COVID grant, we have right now $252,000 budgeted for general operations as conditional grant money. So what that is, so in the budget, I'll go here, is for the so Hockey Academy, changing it to like hockey accommodation facility. I don't think it's a hockey academy anymore, it's just an accommodation facility, so that will be changing. We budget about $40,000 of revenue, $30,000 of expenses, and $85,000 for debt payment, to total a net loss of $75,000 for the 2021 year. Daycare, no revenue, operating costs about $17,300, funded from the COVID grant. Community Health Center, we've got the revenues of $283, the expenses of $424. This is insufficient revenue that will be, the COVID money will apply there. And then IT services, we're engaging a little bit more of a strategic IT person to help us get upstairs and downstairs properly dealt with from an IT perspective. So that's in the operating budget. So we have $252,000 that I'm using that. So now this COVID money of 927 is sitting in a reserve, if you will, on the balance sheet, and then I can apply it to offset expenses throughout the next few years. I just have to track it separately, have a separate statement within the audited statements, and report to the province and on that. And then, so that's year one, and then I'll just finish this and then so year two, so because it's a 5-year financial plan. So as the years progress, the Hockey Academy Daycare and Community Health Center will be absorbing that grant over the 5 years. I'm assuming after year 2, I think the daycare will be breaking even and we won't have any additional costs on that. And then the Hockey Academy will be generating more income, and then the debt payments will eventually be done. So at the end of the 5 years, there's $939,000 of additional expenditures. We have $927 of grant available. So in 2025, there's this $12,800 that I wasn't able to use any grant money for. So goal is in the next 5 years, break even, daycare break even, Hockey Academy break even, health center break even, and then we're good.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Good job, Kelly. That 927,000, was that prescribed by the government that you had 5 years to use it, or would you be able to use 400,000 a year rather than 50,000 years? So it's up to the discretion of the community of what it is. So if something happens next year, you could pull up and you short the bottom.
Correct. This is very floating. So this is the tentative plan for the budget for 2021, right? However, actuals are what they are. Budget is an actual. So if actuals change because of something, yes, we can move this. We have our discretion.
So it's just your reporting to the government. But when the 927 is gone, and they said this was a 5-year plan.
No, they didn't put it over any amount of years. I can spend it all next year. Right, and they didn't, I asked how long we had to spend it, and they said, it's up to you, it's to help you, and I said, 5 years of work, and they're like, yeah, like it's up to you. They have not put a time limit on it.
So, okay, so there's a possibility that enough communities blew through the entire amount and they decide to do this again, so you get an additional funding, or no, because you have some left over there.
You know,
Nobody's got that crystal ball.
Correct. This was, we didn't even know this money was coming, and all of a sudden it just showed up.
Yeah.
which I'm very grateful for. So,
Thanks.
yeah,
Any other comments, questions? No, we're good.
okay, transfer from reserves, always exciting, okay. So basically, what a reserve is just a savings account, just think of it as like, a savings account, but there's lots of different types of savings accounts. So last year, we budgeted, amounts for, so the operating reserve is for one-time operational costs, or things that don't come up, like we can't just cover salaries with it or just materials. So we have doctor recruiting of 10,000 in the budget, transportation and trail plan in the budget for 2020, mountain park, and then that's what we use to fund the two additional $84,000 for the rail trail contribution. So that was 2020. In 2021, I'm budgeting additional doctor recruiting. If we don't use it, it means we're not spending it. It doesn't affect taxes. So that money is just sitting there if we have to spend it, but it doesn't affect anything if we don't. So what I would fund by stuff in the operating reserve is stuff that we want to do, but we don't know if we're going to do it, right? Because it doesn't affect taxes, which is important. And then a transportation and rail plan, and then recreational model review or any costs related to potentially running the rec center. With that, so that's 80,000. Last year was a bit more because we had this lovely transfer from prior surplus from to the debt corp, which we never ended up by doing. So when you go back up to the budget of revenue, it's in revenue because it's coming into income. That's why it's going from 443. Okay, so
Hold on. I think Terry's gonna leave for about an hour, so let's sneak out to
To the chair, and for the benefit of everybody listening in, I have to attend the Columbia Shootout District budget meeting, which was scheduled at the same time, unfortunately, but I'll try to get back to it as soon as I can.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, Malcolm, go ahead.
Yeah, in our agenda later today, we're going to talk about responding to an RFP from the CSRD, Columbia Shootout Regional District, regarding operation and of rec center. And that closes in June or something, I think. If we're successful in that, how does that impact our budget?
That's a great question. So this budget does not include us taking over the operations of the rec center. How the funding model would work is we would have recreation revenue. So let's say we took it over starting August. I'm just throwing that. So then all of a sudden we would have recreation revenue. We have another segment, no different than the community health center, and it would be for recreation. The rec center, we have the recreation revenue, we have the recreation expenses, and that the deficit, because there is a deficit to running an arena, is funded. We pay the CSRD via our tax requisition. So we actually won't be bearing any, it shouldn't affect our general municipal taxes. It'll affect what we pay the CSRD to run it. If that makes sense. It's a little unusual, but because we don't know really how that is going to shake out at this point while we are needing to finalize the budget, once we know what that's going to look like and impacts to us financially, we'll amend the budget accordingly at that time, once we know more information. But it really shouldn't affect our general taxation revenue. It would, that we tax the taxpayers. I think it'll come through CSRD, so there might be some changes there, but we have to work out who we're hiring, how much they're going to cost. Like, there's a lot of information that still needs to be worked out, and we'll address those and make sure we know what they are before we go into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very important.
Thanks. Go ahead, Jeff.
So, I guess because of the question that I'll just ask, some of the concerns that I have, but the 925,000 was a benchmark in understanding of it. because you got it spread over 5 years. So my concern was is how is it actually allocated? Spend it all 1 year. All right. But for some of the things that the district of Sicamous is doing, including taking over the rec center, healthcare services, I mean, there's a lot of new items. And you could have a budget, but your budget can drastically change off of some incident. So I might be jumping ahead here, but my question would be, did you actually run a model of one individual resident, what their property tax was last year, what it will be this year? Is that 1%? So you're saying 1588, but that's got to be based on a per $100,000 value. So did you actually take?
Right, I can, that's a great question. So the average home owner in Sicamous has a value of 354,000 in auction, so it's up 7%. So a 1% tax increase for that homeowner would be $15.88.
So that's based on a 350,000.
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so then one of my concerns is because of this year alone, there's going to be 3 or 4 major changes, and you have that grant funding, and yes, it might be over 5 years. There's no crystal ball to say that the government's going to, but they're giving away money like it's free. They may top it up, they may not top it up. They may have so many other expenses that can't top it up. And further down, the recommendation at the end of this is like a 1.5% tax increase. And I would strongly suggest that we consider that being like 1%, because you're only talking the average homeowner. If that's a 1%, the average homeowner is going to get a $60 hit. But there's so much uncertainty with COVID. Is it over this year? We've got a new strain. They're saying the vaccine doesn't work on it. But that many question marks. Trying to stay like Savannah was what 6% or 7% last year. The city of Florida was they were all a lot higher than we. We are probably the lowest increase on any community surrounding us. So
Seminars was 0% last year, and theirs for this year is 0.5.
and Vernon, Kelowna.
I don't know what Vernon and Kelowna are, but I did talk to the CFO yesterday.
Close to 0.
Yes, so Salmon Arm did make an effort, I know, they made theirs 0 last year because of COVID, and then they made theirs 0.5 this year because of COVID. They were very, yeah.
And what was their COVID check?
I think it was about 3 million and change, yeah, that was much larger than ours, could have even been a little bit more than that. And I think they used a lot of that, originally their tax increase was 3.7 or 3.5, and they used their COVID money to make it 0.5.
Okay. So, and you're comfortable with that? That's my biggest question. You're the CFO, so are you comfortable with that? Like at the end of this, you've got a 1.5% increase. So, are you?
I mean, I don't feel comfortable inflating it if you don't have legitimate expenses. So I just look at what our revenues are, what our actuals are. And I mean, if we didn't have this COVID money, it would have been 7.5%. So the fact that we're going from 7.5 to 1.9, I'm very comfortable with, and I wouldn't want to increase that more because when that COVID money goes, we're still going to need some type of revenue. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty, I agree, but I feel comfortable with this. I think it's reasonable given the time and everything we're doing. I'm also mindful of the, person sitting at home with maybe some income issues. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just like, I mean, we're a house is listing in Sicamous, so if you're paid doors to buy, and the price of real estate is going up.
Yeah.
And it's, I just get nervous when, if you don't get the money from Big Brother, we're gonna have some serious issues.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm gonna weigh in. I agree with Jeff. Like, if we didn't have the COVID money right now, we'd be up 7%. My fear is that next year or in 2 years, we're gonna be up 15%, and there's no cushion, there's nothing to catch us. So that's my concern by relying on COVID, which, and I understand we're in tough times, but I think it's gonna get really tough if all of a sudden we're hit with this huge tax increase. So I don't know, I just think that there should be a buffer, a bit of a cushion or.
Well, so an option would be I could tax more and put it into an operating reserve. Our operating reserve for one-time operational expenses is getting low when we look at reserves. So because I would need to allocate that money to something, right? So if we do increase it, it would need to go to something for general operations. So that would be the one spot that we could use the money in for one-time operational expenses in the future.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
I like the way Kelly's done it now. Thank you, through the chair. I like the way Kelly's done it now because you've taken the COVID money and spread it over 5 years. Hopefully, somewhere in 2022 we'll be through COVID. But if not, we still have all that buffer spread over 5 years to offset our increase in taxes. So we're covered over 5 years, and inside that 5-year period, the three key things: the hockey academy will hopefully look after itself. The healing center will be, or the health center we break even or close to break even, and what was their other expenses? Sorry, there was three key ones.
Daycare, hockey academy.
Yeah, sorry, daycare. So inside of 3 years, those three variables should get close to zero, and we still have 2 more years of COVID money spread across a 5-year frame. So I think Kelly's got it protected pretty good.
Why don't we just look at the overall expenses, see where we're sitting, and then see how comfortable you feel afterwards.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's take a look at the whole picture of where we're spending our money, and then you can see how comfortable you feel, regardless of what the percentage is, how that makes you feel about where our money's going.
Okay, yeah.
But I definitely hear what you're saying. We have lots of balls in the air, and there is a lot of unknown, and yes, I'm very mindful, and just so everybody knows, I have gone through this budget and our expenses with a fine-tooth comb. I've probably irritated a few people, but I have really, I'm very mindful of where money goes. Everybody knows that they don't just buy whatever they want whenever they want it. It's a very, I'm very mindful of all of the expenses and where everybody's budgets are at, and I'm pushing that down on everybody very, very strongly, because we do have more things happening. We do have more people around, and it costs money, but we need to make sure we're spending that stuff on stuff we need, not stuff that is wanted. So that is being communicated, and I'm making everybody very accountable for their budget. There's not a lot of wiggle room. So just so everybody knows, I'm trying to trim whatever I can, wherever I can, recognizing there's other things where that money needs to go. Okay, so there's a lot of information here, and by no means do I want to go through all of this, but I can. So I thought I'd leave it up to you. Would you like me to summarize each one, or do you guys just want to ask me questions?
Go ahead, Jeff.
What would you prefer?
In your first part, that we skipped to just like.
So that was revenue. We're on expenses now.
Yeah, so okay, so no, yeah, that's good. I just thought maybe this.
Okay, so is there a preference? Do we want to go through, do you want me to highlight on some key ones?
I think you should just touch on
Key ones. Here we go. Okay, so legislative. So that is expenses related to anything legislative, which has your remuneration in it, has stuff to run meetings, anything related to council chambers. So in this, it includes a change to council and mayor remuneration, as discussed at the previous finance committee meeting on December 9th.
So, go ahead, Bob.
At the appropriate time, I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, no, well, we can talk about it as we go through it, so everybody knows the change, and this has not been finalized, it's in the budget, so council all talked about it previously, they high level agreed to a tentative change, mayor from 25 to 35, council from, I believe it was 13?
Yeah, just under
13.2 or something like that to 15,000, after looking at other municipalities and whatever. So we haven't changed the bylaw, it's just in the budget. And if council agrees to it, we will then do the bylaw, if not.
So, and this is where we want to talk about this?
Sure, yeah,
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, so, I'm glad I could make it today. Usually I can't make Wednesday meetings because I have other meetings that got canceled, so I'm glad to be here. I was here December 9th, and we talked about our remuneration, and I think most of us I felt that it was okay to get the mayor a modest wage right now because of all the work he does. I personally, while we're talking about this, because I wasn't in favor then of us getting any increase in the time of COVID. I think that we really have to cut back as much as we can right now because of all the uncertainty. And I know that other municipalities, we've looked at them and kind of averaging it out right now, but I personally feel like we're okay the way things are as public servants, and I just don't feel comfortable. I would feel comfortable getting the mayor maybe this year a $5,000 raise, but for ourselves, I think we're okay for a year. We can reassess it in a year, and that's my feeling on it. I just we talked about how folks are feeling, and there's so much angst and uncertainty right now. And then I read a letter this morning as well. Actually, just when I got here, I saw it from a former counselor, and I think that would be echoed in the feeling of most of our constituents too. I just feel strongly about us just going back to what we were last year, possibly for a cost of living raise, but I think we're okay for this year. That's my gut feeling on that. I feel quite strongly about it. So,
Chad?
I agree somewhat with Councilor Evans. The thing is that I think that the way that council remuneration and the mayor's remuneration should be is that, when you're a newly elected official, you should get X. And if you make the second term, you should get an increase. But in the time right now today to work with this budget and try to show that we are trying to be fiscally responsible, the amount of time that the mayor puts in, I think he's deserving of the 35, maybe even more. But to me, it doesn't make any difference if you raise me a 50 or leave where it is. I don't care. I got elected to help the community, not to kill it. But at the same time, for the amount of work we do, 15 is like a dime an hour. So it's ridiculous. If you consider we have staff here that's making a lot more money per hour than we are, and we got to field a lot of anger from the community. So, and it ends up on staff shoulders eventually. But I agree that our remuneration can stay where it is, but I definitely think the mayor should go.
Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, through the chair, I agree 100% with Bob when it comes from all this. I think its timing's not right now, and we have an uncertain year. It's just really uncertain where we're going to be. And, and say we got elected to be fiscally responsible, and that's what we're doing. I think so. I think we should carry on that way. Thank you.
Malcolm.
And I agree with the mayor.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I agree with the mayor. The mayor does put in so much time, and I have no problem with him putting this.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with all the councillors' comments. I don't think we should get a raise. We get a cost of living adjustment that happens annually. I think that's good enough. And I think that the mayor should also get a bump. Well, how much that is, 5,000 for sure, but yeah, I think the mayor should get a bump, but I don't think council should.
I'm gonna echo that. I think that I feel the council can hold for a year, and I feel 5,000 maybe a bump for the mayor, because we're part of a team, right? So and we do a lot of work as well. So I think it's just fair, and it's fair to the community. So I think, and for us, and maybe a $5,000 bump for the mayor.
Kelly, what would be the percentage increase? I know you could probably just click on something and it'll tell you.
No.
If you take the wage up for us,
Hold on.
like the,
Yeah, I think it's like about,
it's gonna be about 4.5%.
no,
If you just raise the mayor.
right, so, correct, there'll be, sorry.
30.
Don't press a button. So it's like maybe 2.2 times, there's how many, 6? So another 13,200 less, which, 0.3 of the tax, so here this would go down by 0.3. See what I mean? So it would be 1.6 something.
Yeah.
The tax increase.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, anything we could do like that at this time in history, I think is a good idea. So, I mean, that makes me happy that it would at least go from 1.9 to 1.6. And I trust you, Kelly, if there's any, like, you're worried about this too, I know. So if there's anything else that we can do that would save our town in this weird time we're living in a little bit, that would be great. So
Yeah.
thanks for your work. I know you're working hard on this.
Oh yes, I'm trimming whatever I can trim.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I still don't think that the mayor should get a bump to like 35. I mean, he's in this office every day. He's here at least 4 to 6 hours a day. I would not want to be there. I mean, and I definitely wouldn't be there for 35,000. That's ridiculous.
We all know that these positions aren't about the money, they're about community service.
Well, but at the same time, for the headache that you have to do, there should be some level of compensation. And so, I mean, I hate to say it, but our predecessors 8 years ago, there wasn't a lot of movement. And so $7,000 a year was a token fee but there's a lot of things going on, and the councilors and the mayor are all involved in almost everything that's going on in one way or another. And therefore, if you want to move the community forward, it costs money. So.
Well, perhaps what we should do is table this until the mayor has a chance to speak to it. Perhaps he'd like to take a smaller bump as opposed to those.
Yeah.
And I can quantify it for you, so if council decides to not, what I'm hearing is council just wants to keep their wage status quo. So the tax increase changes from 1.91 to 1.6. That's with the mayor at 35, so a bump of 10. If we reduce the mayor to 30, which is a bump of 5, then that goes down a further 0.1. So it goes down from 1.61 to 1.51. Okay, so do you want to think about it? And then as we go through, or do you want to make a decision on it?
Well, there's a few more things to talk about.
Okay, all right.
We could talk about slash or like the next line.
Hold on, Jeff. Go ahead, Bob.
I'm willing to wait a little longer too, but I would personally feel good with getting it down another to 1.5 by bumping our mayor, which I would love to give him a $20,000 raise. I really would, but I think we can talk to him about. I think he'll agree that right in this weird time we're in, that might be a good idea too. But that's just my feeling. So
Sure.
I'd be comfortable making a decision now, but I'm willing to wait a little longer, like Councilor Malo says, to see what else is coming up. So.
Malcolm, go ahead.
Well, yeah, as counselors, we can make a decision on our behalf on our wages. We're saying, no, just a cold clause thing. And then just leave them up to defer table, like you said, until Terry has a chance or Mary has a chance for input. I support 5, even going a 10 bump, 0.01% of the tax increase is not that bad. I think it does more accurately reflect the level of effort from our mayor. That should be a paid position, in my opinion. That with the amount of effort our mayor puts in.
And I think that we all agree on that, but these are unprecedented times, and I think that's where the dilemma is right now. I think that everyone agrees that the mayor should get more money. It's just that right now, we're looking after keeping the community as tight as we can. So do you guys want to defer this, or do we want to vote on it? Go ahead, Jeff.
I think we have 22 more items that we could cut some fat off of. So I think you might probably get to the bottom of it.
Sure. And then circle back to see what we want to cut. Bob,
I was just gonna say, I agree with Councillor McCabe.
table it.
Like wait a little longer to talk to the mayor, but I'm sure that he's gonna be fine with it.
And just so everybody knows, my plan is to bring the budget, we'll be doing ads, and there's a formal presentation after March. I'm not sure, it's the second meeting in March, because we have 10 days of advertising for the huge crowd that shows up. And so we will bring the final budget there. So.
Okay, good. Well, let's carry on.
Okay, so legislative administration, so that's gone up from last year. And this is primarily the allocation of Shauna's wage from finance to administration, because she previously was doing mainly payroll. Now she's full blown HR. So we have her in administration, and then we have changed from a deputy corporate officer to a corporate officer. So a higher level of skill set there, which demands a higher salary, and then a few other minor ups and downs. But it's primarily corporate officer and allocation of HR wage. And then finance is, okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So we're about to hire a development services personnel.
Yeah.
That is it here.
Yeah, it's development and zoning, so it's also up. So additional wages and contract services for 2021 as a result of the projects to complete. So in here, there is a development services wage. So the wages, some are up, some are down. So yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So here you have the council sitting here trying to save 0.1%. And we got 67 and 20% in office, administration and staff. Is there any way that our administration could fix some of that? Like that's a hell of a big hit. You're supposedly uncertainty and cutback. So.
Well, I have lots of detail here, Jeff, and I'm more than happy to go through exactly how much everything costs and what's inside on multiple levels. So I have trimmed everything I can possibly trim from this. And at the end of the day, the wages and the cost to operate the district of Sicamous, given all the projects and items that we're taking on, we are all working very hard, and I think you have a good caliber of people here, and we are all mindful of the cost. And I'm happy to sit down. I mean, we can break this out and go through a bunch of detail, but I personally can't find any more spots unless you want to fire somebody.
Well, and that's our goal. We have to get to the point where we're not hiring more people. We have to either retrain or multiple tasks with people, because we're going to take on the rec center, which I guarantee is going to have another 3.5 or 4 employees for our payroll. And the task of doing it, we're doing it to hopefully not pay $210,000 to the CSRD. And hopefully you can reduce that amount of cost by utilizing the building. But again, it's in a time where you can't go in the building to utilize it. So it's gonna be a dead ass expense is all it's gonna be. So I'm going, like, if council is sitting here discussing 0.1%, and we got the other side saying that 67% and 21% is acceptable, either we're stupid or there's something wrong with this. It's just, we have to also make sure we don't hire any more people. And we justify the cost of it, because I can't go along with the idea that we're willing to take a haircut and the other side isn't. Yes, there is lots going on. And we need to move the community forward. We have some housing projects, we have this, we need some services, but the cost of increasing staff is not to be acceptable.
Thanks, Jeff. I don't think, and I'll let you go next, Gord. I don't think that we've added a lot of bodies, and we've signed up for this gig not for the money.
Sure.
These folks signed up for this gig because they're working really hard. We, as a council, have thrown a ton of stuff at them. They spend a lot of time after hours doing things. There's not a lot of people added, and I truly trust that Kelly's got a good grip on this. So I'm comfortable with it, and I get people need increases, and I get how stretched people are. I know how hard they work, and running the district of Sicamous is not an easy gig. Having us as bosses, and all of us have a portfolio this long, and we're in touch with all of these people all of the time and added to their plate. I think that they should be reimbursed for what they did when we just spent time. And I don't think Kelly's adding numbers, adding bodies to the process. I think we're moving some people around. I think we're moving some money around, but I don't think that, I think that Kelly's got a good grip on this. Go ahead, Gord.
And I hear you, Jeff, and it's a tough nut to crack, but, part of our, it's not just running the day-to-day stuff, it's our acquisitions. We've purchased a lot of stuff as council, and we're trying to pay for it. And we're just, you really just look at the assets we've purchased since we've been in the council, and trying to meet those financial obligations. And we do, the people that Kelly, and probably more so Kelly than anybody, the people that Kelly is trying to put into positions are the most important ones we need right now. Our development service department is so needed right now as the community grows. Right now we're on the verge, and we're hearing it from the developers. The developers are all telling you and me and all the other councils why we're failing. We know we've been failing in a while in that development department. And that's the position we have to fill, and we have to get that. We have to be ready for when the development's coming. It's here. It's just we're not ready yet. And I feel comfortable that Kelly has done everything she can. I mean, I see even the fire department, I see everybody getting chopped, and I know you're doing your best, and you can, and I think we're going down the right path. Our assets, when we start buying property and having to pay the debt, that's
not in source.
Somewhere else.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Bushel, there. Staff is working hard. Joe, our operations manager / project manager / everything else manager. Saturdays, Sundays, and Kelly putting a lot of time in, and not just those staff, but all the staff. And I used to be a paid staff member for government. We went through austerity programs where, excuse me, work smarter, not harder. do more with less. Well, we're past that here in our local community with staff. Staff needs positions filled. If we're ambitious and we achieve our goals, we have a vision. Staff makes that happen. We have vacancies that need filling, and our current staff is overworked. I don't support Councilor Thomas's comment.
Thanks. Can we just hold 1 second?
No, it's Brian.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, hold on, Ryan. You're muted. Here he is.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear everybody really good. Thank you. I just wanted to chime in on this as well. I've been thinking about all of our expenses through a transit point of view sometimes, because we're in a real growth phase as a community, and a lot of communities our size are looking at taking on a lot of expenses like transit and stuff. And I see everything the previous council took on in the previous 4 years. You know, I got a lot of respect for the direction a lot of these initiatives are and stuff, and balance that with a lot of the financial commitments that make things feel a little bit tight right now. But I think there's been a lot of thought go into stuff, and I really think Kelly has made this as easy as it can be to understand. And yeah, I don't like how stuff continually grows and gets more expensive, but we're a growing community trying to get ahead in these times, and it's very expensive, and it seems very unavoidable to me. And we have a lot of staff doing a really good job, and we're getting caught up on our sorry for being so long-winded, on our zoning bylaws and stuff. And there's so many things that we're doing a great job on, or well, not me personally, but everybody. Thank you. I'm very much in support of the money that we're spending, and I see where Jeff's coming from, and it bothers me too, but it's a good conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Go ahead, Jeff.
So don't take it wrong, that I don't think staff is not working. We have excellent staff. I mean, I know Joe's been standing up that bridge at 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. The staff that we have is, I just am opposed to more staff. I think that we are in a transitional zone. There's some key positions that we really need, like a building inspector is paramount. I think a building inspector is more paramount than a development services person, because what's coming down the pipe without a building inspector, none of it's going to happen. So, and a building inspector helps your revenue, because the more properties that get built, the bigger that tax revenue. So I'm just saying that I'm not opposed. I don't think the staff we have is doing a bad job at all. They're doing a fantastic job, but we need to be smart about what we're doing on the hiring department side, about what we really, really, really need. Don't fill a hole because there's a hole there. Fill a hole because we really need it to get this community to move forward. That's all I was trying.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the clarification. And I think that I think Kelly's doing a great job in filling the spots that need to be filled with the folks that are qualified for those positions. And yeah, you know, we can tell that we're still a planning person and of course a building inspector. And I think they're built into this right now. So yeah. Any other comments on this? Okay, let's move on. Okay.
And I agree, let's fill what we need. I don't want any extra fluff here, you know, and then I want you to come to work and do your job, please, because it makes the district of Sicamous look better and move forward. It's just, ultimately, I can tell you what everybody here wants. We want us to be a well-oiled machine, being able to serve the public to the best of our ability. That is our mission. Okay. So I'll just, so I'm going to continue kind of skimming through because we still have a bunch to go through. So I don't want to bore anybody, but I'm very happy to stop and have discussion because this is the time to have it. And it's a great discussion. Okay, finance is very similar to last year. There's a little bit more because we've now got a budget software that is life-changing for me, and we'll be able to produce a lot of great reports, and you'll be seeing it moving forward. Municipal Office, this is where all of our IT stuff goes and general repairs for the DOS building. It is up primarily because I've got some more money in there for some IT services, but I've offset that by the grant, so it actually doesn't affect taxes because I've got that additional money, grant funded. Main Street properties, just the cost of the Main Street properties, Finlayson Place, the cost of operating Finlayson Place. The revenue is up top of the revenue. This is just the expenses. It's a little reduction. I looked at prior actuals and our snow removal's a bit less and stuff, so I've decreased that a bit. Daycare costs, just the operating costs budgeted for the year. I'm happy to go into detail on any of these, but also I'm happy to not. Hockey Academy, the operating costs of the Hockey Academy. There's a lot with utilities and internet services for that Hockey Academy, given what's going on there. So those are quite high for that facility, but it's part of the package. Community Health Center, we went over the cost of that. So that's the estimated operating costs. Economic development, so this does look like it's going down, but actually it's slightly going up because we had a $300,000 one-time grant in that last year, which we don't have this year. So there's money in there for to operate the VIC, to pay to the deaf board, for the tourism, and then just general, we also have for a few billboards and general marketing materials, we have about 27,000 or 23,000 in there for that. So that's what economic development money is. Fire department, that also is a bit of a skew. It's not really accurate in terms of comparing prior years because prior year had several grant funded projects, so it didn't really affect taxes, but the general fire department expenses are relatively similar to last year when you take that grant out. Building inspection and bylaw, this is just a change in slight change in the actual wages based on what we were doing last year to this year. This incorporates a reasonable amount for building inspection as well as for bylaw services on a part-time and full-time in the summer basis.
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
On building inspection, is that like a fee for service? So the actually we're charged for.
Well, most of our stuff has an inspection fee of $50. It doesn't pay for their wage per se. That revenue, that building inspection revenue, is lumped in with this revenue here under, oops, where is that? Sorry, licenses, permits, and fines. So there's building permits. I think we have about 80-some-odd-thousand building permits in 2020. That revenue.
Thanks.
Okay, building inspection, public works. So this is just comments or various costs of running public works. Very similar to last year. These next few relating to public works are very, little minor changes to better reflect our prior year actuals. So we have public works common services there, engineering services, slight change as well, patching, sidewalks, storms, street sweeping, bridge maintenance, all very similar. Street sweeping did go up about 5,000 from last year. We changed that budget a little bit. Street lighting, so it cost us just under $100,000 to, I skipped snow removal. I decreased that slightly to better reflect prior actuals, but snow removal goes up and down each year depending on the weather. But the last 3 years historically, it's been under 178. I kept that snow removal budget the same because I'm very mindful, but it's historically been under 170, around 170, so I decreased it. Street lighting, yeah, it costs us, this is primarily to BC Hydro for lighting our streets.
Go ahead, Jeff.
2 years ago, I think we discussed the idea of LED lighting, and I think that somebody that you actually knew was going to have a look at that. Did that ever go anywhere, or is that just on the show?
Yeah, I forwarded it on to Public Works. I think you guys looked at
maybe looking at municipal hall, lighting up municipal hall and starting with our own facilities. Yeah, you Joe can comment on it.
Yeah, no, thank you for the chair. The ballast to replace the lighting system that we had just now wasn't, it would cost me everything. And so what we have to do is change out some of the ballasts and then do an alteration bulb. Products that ended up being very, very expensive. The initial outlay expense was significant. So we actually looked at a number of cost savings that we could do. But we do look at that as a project to move forward on, but it hasn't been identified this year. So
Like, I know the price of LED lights has dropped dramatically in the last 2 years.
it's the conversion from the current bulbs we have to LEDs. Is that conversion kit, moving all the ballast out on it was exceptionally expensive. It wasn't going to be bringing the budget forward on the costs that we're looking at for it, even if we were getting LED bulbs for free. It was the expense of actually changing them all out, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it wasn't. But all the new lights that we have in there are LEDs, and we are talking to BC Hydro now for I think it's called a SLIM, which is a service that we look at BC Hydro. So we're looking at grants that will be made available so that we can do that through renewable clean energy grants and stuff like so. Again, something like that, we're ready to go for it. But a lot of data and figures that we can share a bit quickly. They would prefer to spend the money on it.
Thanks.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Perfect. Mosquito control, a slight increase from prior year, more consistent with with actuals. The mosquito control material, we seem to be buying more of that.
Yeah.
Planning and zoning, that is up. That's a combo of wages as well as contract services to get all the projects we have complete, zoning bylaw, short-term rentals. We all know the things that we have going on in that department. Community development. So this is a bunch of stuff, and each year it goes up and down, and a lot of these things within community development are funded from either grants or operating reserves. Not all of them, but some of them, because they're more one-offers. What's in there this year, we've got work for the campground, we've got age-friendly, community bloom, asset management, recreational model review, and additional library funding. Just pay the library additional approximately $20,000. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Anyway, so that goes into the community development department. Then
Can I just maybe, can we add to that? Because last year we put a little money into decorating Main Street for Christmas. Is there, and this might be just, it's a small amount, but could we add a small amount so we can continue to add to Main Street?
Yeah, most definitely. That would be in the special events.
For Joe's team.
Yes. So that would be in the special events budget. So we can take a look at that and definitely tweak it and make sure there's a buffer there for some additional Christmas stuff. Sure. Yes. Okay, parks and cemetery, that's down. That's basically some material savings, about 5,000 materials, but the rest is mainly wages, reduction of wages. Going the right way. Special events also down. Minimal events expected in 2021 as well. We were paying 50,000 for a contractor within the previous year budget. See, remember, we're not comparing actual to budget, we're comparing budget year to budget year. And when we did last year's budget, we had all these great plans, but nothing ever materialized. Well, it didn't materialize, so there is a reduction there. But there is buffer. There's a good for if we want to look at the. I know everybody loves the detail. If we want to look at the detail within events, there is a buffer contract service amount. Contract services 50,000. So see, we had 65 in there previously because we had event contractors. But 15,000 is a bit of a buffer for whatever things occur throughout the year that we could put Christmas stuff to. See, there's fireworks in there for 20,000. We're still putting money in for fireworks. There's a little bit for August long weekend. Canada Day is halved. You know, Winter Carnival, there's still some money, S Games, so there's still money in there for stuff, so we'll see how it actually shakes out. Okay, and so that's where your Christmas stuff will come.
Okay, thank you. And it's just probably a good thing that we keep that in there, because when COVID funding passes and we're back to normal, perhaps there could be a big party, a grander.
Oh, yeah, theirs will go back.
All summer, let's rock Sicamous.
Yes, this is temporary. Okay, curling club, I budgeted a little less this year based on prior year actuals. Recreation program, so it costs about $10,000 just under to operate the curling club. Recreation programming is very comparable to prior year, about $100,000 to operate programming. Interest charges, lower interest rates, so that's expected to go down a little bit. Short-term interest, this is a budget of what we would be paying for our various short-term loans with MFA, which is on our next one. So in 2020, that's 200 Main Street right there. This debt repayment is $80K for the hockey academy, and I've got for now $50K for housing. So I tentatively have changed the housing budget to $250. We're borrowing from MFA, and so then the payments would be $50,000 a year. So we can talk about that piece of the capital side of things. So just because things have changed in terms of our housing acquisition, so I've got that at $250, repayments of $50K, hockey academy at $80K. So that this one is up, but yet still down from what it was originally potentially could be. Capital expenditures. When we talk about our capital plan, you'll see this money there. It just gets moved over to pay for capital acquisitions, transferred to reserves. This is money that we put away into our savings account. I have a little summary of what that's made up of. And then this other funds, this is the money that goes to water and sewer to pay for the debt payments. So at the end of the day, our revenues are 7.1, our expenses are 7.2. We need an additional $86,000 to balance our budget, which is always the goal. So that would be 1.91% tax increase to generate that amount. But I know we discussed there's some other things that can modify that. Before we drill too much into that, I just wanted to show you the transfer to reserves as we're going to be moving to capital. So annually, we have a budget. So we have a policy that says, in our general fund, we should be putting away 10 to 15% of our tax revenue into reserves so we can spend it on capital replacement and new construction. Oh my goodness. So right now, we budgeted $650 to go into reserves, and that's 14% of our tax revenue. So it's in the range. So as you can see through the 5-year plan, it is between 10 and 15%. So I feel like we're putting a reasonable amount away. Do I have an asset management plan to show exactly that? No. So for now, based on, a reasonable amount to put away, that between 10 to 15% seems reasonable, but the more we acquire, the more that number needs to go up. So I don't have an exact answer for that, but we're at least putting away a reasonable amount, which I'm happy with. And these are the different reserves that they go in: 50 in general office, 60 in fire, PW equipment, 100 land, 20, campground 20, housing 20, fire hall 20, roads and storm 230, recreation 10, and then I've got a non-market change bucket because of new growth. So we put some money in there for that.
So Kelly, is that, and it could be somewhere else. We did have a budget line for property acquisition, and we're putting money into reserves for property. So
yeah,
is that, sorry?
Well, that would be the land amount.
Okay.
That's land, yes.
So we've got $20,000.
Well, that's how much we put away annually. That's not what our balance is. We'll talk about that shortly.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's just our annually what we put into basically.
And that hasn't changed. We're not changing any of that.
We have not changed that, no.
So based on land increasing, should we not look at maybe increasing that a little bit in case we do have land acquisition and land is going up? It's weighing the two. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
So can you scroll back that page, please?
Yeah.
So I like the number that you said about recreation, 10,000 as opposed to the 100,000 that's on the line there. What's the 100,000 in recreation?
Oh, that's a great question. That is for boat launches. That's for, it's all capital infrastructure. It's for parks, anything trails, recreation related. So we'll show you that recreation reserve and how it's depleting over the next 5 years. So that goes into all that kind of stuff.
So
It's capital.
it's depleting over the next 5 years, and when you look at what the recreation is and the boat launches, and we're doing grant applications for some of that stuff. I would rather take some of that 100,000 allocated. I don't know if that part of our bylaw, like is that got set out, because that money's gonna all be trouble, but I'd rather see that 50 than the land 7. Recreation 50, land 7.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you guys want to put more in your land reserve.
That was just for me. I think we need to have a conversation about it, but maybe we need to get into the deeds of recreation before we start moving money. So, but I don't know, how does council feel about adding more money to the land line? Gord?
Well, through the chair, I think we need to get rid of some land. I mean, we've been on a shopping spree for a little while, and we have some nice assets out there now. And hopefully, you know, with the timing and everything, it might be an opportunity.
Sure, and I agree, we've got some pieces of land that we actually need to keep community, and there are some pieces of land that we do have that we should, and I think we've discussed this, let them go. Malcolm?
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, so one of the pieces that we talked about disposal was that little park that's over at Silver Sand. And so some of that recreational land is for park, for future, or work with the park. And I'm not sure when we dispose of a park, that money has to be used at a certain spot. It's not a willy-nilly. It either goes in the park fund or can it be used to.
It has to be used to acquire other park lands.
Okay, so if we do a campground, it could go there.
If we're designated a portion of it as a park, yes.
So that's all I'm saying is that I'm not, I don't care about the details, but the recreation and the land side, everybody up there, can we use that money in the land fund to actually pay some of this stuff, or we just acquire more money? Because I thought we used some of it already, did we have to account basically to buy some of the property purchased already?
Yeah, we have used all of our reserve money, and we'll talk about reserves here in a little bit. You'll see the balances of all of them, so you'll have a better high level understanding when we get into capital.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, all good questions. And what I'm hearing though is that there is an appetite for potentially some funds to be allocated towards land. And this is not set in stone. This is where we need to take a look at all of our assets, all of our infrastructure. When does it really need to be replaced? And make sure we're putting those in the right buckets. I feel like we're potentially collecting enough, but are we putting them in the right buckets? I don't know. And I think there may be some room to maybe this general office, maybe we can reduce this and I can put more into land. Right? So that when we look at the reserves, when I'm hearing what you're saying, but anyways, we will, I've noted it, so it will be just, I'm not gonna forget.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that is all for general operations as of now. And then we're gonna get into water and sewer, but do you wanna take a 5-minute break?
For sure, yeah.
You're not, we're right, equipment fund.
Oh, yes, so perfect, thanks, sorry, I was going through, so on here, there it is. So within the budget as it stands, I have it so that these payments are continuing for a loaner. So, and this just came to my attention because the MFA loan is coming up here in March. So basically, we have a loader that traditionally we've traded in every 5 years, and the payments just continue in the budget. So the budget now is tentatively whatever, and I still have that payment coming out within the budget, within Public Works Common Services. But in order to do it, I need a resolution because it's through MFA. So MFA requires us a resolution to basically replace the old debt with a different debt with whatever the payments are now. So that's what this is here. I put this here for information for us to talk about, see if you feel comfortable with it. And then if you do, this is also at the regular council meeting tonight for the formal resolution. So with that, I will open it up.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So unfortunately, I had breakfast with Joe this morning and he's defending this. I'm not defending it. I didn't agree with the 5-year old loader with no hours on it. And we don't use it. A loader is a piece of equipment that gets banged to the side of a hill, beat up, and the rest of it. We drive around now to push little snow and it's not getting abused. I've talked to several people, and the worst thing that ever happens to it is the transmission bill. And that's a $25,000 expense. And Joe said this morning that load only has 6,000 hours on it. And it's a 0.4% tax savings if we don't do it. Now, if we waited a year or two to see what happens with COVID and funding. So I'm not in favor of replacing.
Joe, do you want to speak?
So,
Malcolm, go ahead.
yeah, it's a 0.04%, not 0.4.
So it's 0.4% on option 2, do not replace it.
And just, you're correct. However, I was told that the tires would need to be replaced on it in this year, which would be 25. I noted that here. I didn't put it here because it wasn't part of the monthly payments, but we would have to replace the tires at a cost of 25,000. So when you look at that, it's not 0.4. It really be pretty much the same.
Yes.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
So this is just sort of a rollover cost, if you will, to keep our equipment up to date and keep the downtime to a minimum, keep our maintenance costs to a minimum by keeping equipment new. This is always a catch-22 kind of an argument. Do you put money into maintenance or how much value do you get out of the equipment? In my mind, a loader is pretty important, and so is downtime. If you need it, it should be there, ready to go, not in the shop to fix it. If we don't buy a new loader, we're going to put out 25 grand for a set of tires for the existing one. That new loader comes with new tires. I think because we don't have a big maintenance shop, if you will, for maintenance. We therefore have to keep our equipment newer to avoid we can just count on warranty work instead of routine maintenance or maintenance costs. I'd rather cut back a little bit of Joe's paving program and keep the loader neglected.
Thanks. Go ahead, Joe.
Our loader, thank you through the chair. And just before I came here in 2016, I know that the loader was up for renewal. I know it was a conventions discussion to have with council at that point in time as well. When I speak to my public works staff, it is our largest piece of equipment. It does have its largest expenses if they need to do repairs, tires, such like with it as well. We do push the significant amount of snow down with that loader as a key piece for snow removal. But it is also used in and around some of the large projects that we do in town as well. Through several conversations we've had with council through the optimum time to change vehicles in, both with some of our trucks, our fleets, and our loaders, there is a perfect time to do that, and it's at this opportunity that we find ourselves. I appreciate Kelly being as flexible with this one. This was one that Kelly brought back to me. This was the one that we were looking with. But if we look at how much money we're spending on savings versus getting a brand new machine under warranty, the costs are basically zero where we're moving forward on it. We're basically paying down the depreciation on it separately. And right at this point in time, a brand new loader, when I went to speak to, I had a cold call around 5 different John Deere suppliers. For a brand new 2021 L loader, that's $395,000. We're getting a deal of $255,000. what we're doing on it, we're getting 166 grand back for the trade-in. I feel confident that if we do want to do something like this, we do want to have that fleet looked at as a key piece to some of the operations that we're doing. And cumulatively, when we're looking across the board, we want public works to be doing things like clearing the lots for us and doing additional work over and above what we're trying to do just now. We're going to need some of these key pieces. If not, we'll put it back out and we get private contractors to do it for us. But our staff need to do work, they need the equipment. It's one of these ones that I feel comfortable standing behind. And I appreciate it. There's a potential there to save on some of it, but I don't think it's as good a value as a warranty and a new machine that we're going to establish. Just my opinion.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other comments? Same. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Go ahead, Gordon.
So how much do we spend on maintenance right now again?
For that machine, and for that machine, we just do fees and oil changes on it. So we're not doing a massive maintenance on it. We've not had an awful lot of issues with a couple of recalls on it, and the tyres are due to be replaced, which are roughly 25 grand. So if we don't replace it, we're going to spend $25,000 on it this year, which we knew was probably going to happen towards the end of this year, but we're going to put new tyres on it for the winter season towards the end of the year. But we couldn't really limit it through on it. It's more the option of the warranty and this MFA that we get the opportunity to do and keep payments the same. We don't spend a lot of money on maintenance on these things.
Jeff, you think transmissions every 6,000 hours? Or that's
So transmissions about every 25,000. According to the guys that use them, gravel pit. That's the one I'm hearing. This is that's your biggest problem. Yes, tires are a thing, but $25,000 today or in the fall, as opposed to another 25,000 next year, and another 25,000 year after, another 25,000. Like the trade-in machine because you get new tires. That's like saying I'm getting rid of my car because I can't afford to buy the tires for it. So I'm just going, when you're trying to be fiscally responsible, it's 0.4%, which covers off the mayor's wage. Like I said, if you go through the whole list, there's some things you can cut some hair on. And I think that when you look at in the community today, I don't think next year, I guess the question would be, Joe, other than there was some recalls, which if there's recalls, it doesn't matter if it's 6 years old or 8 years old, the recalls are still recalls, and they still do that. But how many warranty issues does it have? I don't think it's had any.
But I would need to go back and look at all, I need to fill all that information up, see what the costs are for the warranty ones. But I mean, this is one of our key pieces on it. We're not, I just want to clarify, we're not trading it because we need the tires.
And I just wanted to point out the MFA rate is under 1%, so this is almost essentially free money.
Gordon?
I just, I just like a little more on the maintenance of it, have a look at it myself before I make the decision. But I won't be able to make the decision today or not.
Was on council's agenda tonight.
Yeah.
What we totally generate figures for tonight, I mean, I can bring them back for you, but I mean, annual operating costs and running for the machine of this size will be around $5,000 worth of basic maintenance for our staff's time. Our staff do a lot of the maintenance on it, do a lot of the oil changes, hydraulic changes, hoses and stuff like that as well. I know that we've replaced some studs and tires. There will be small items that we've replaced on it. There's nothing massive to this point. It's a very good machine to go around with. However, the opportunity to get a brand new machine with a full warranty bumper warranty on it and keep our costs exempt really are just very nice and a really good option for us. If we don't, we're going to spend 25 grand in tires and we're going to have a machine for warranty, and we're going to miss the opportunity to trade that in and keep $165,000 if we save value on. Because next year we're going to be down to 120, 110, and we're going to be spending $25,000 in tires, which then makes it economically not a good option to do it next year. So that's my kind of focus forward to.
There is a sweet spot where something retains its value.
Yeah,
or we let it depreciate the service.
Yep.
Spending the money either way.
okay, go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Yeah, we're spending money either way, and this money is, like Kelly says, close to, well, there's no such thing as free money, but interest-free money. I think the key thing here is warranty, and Joe might come back to us before our council meeting this evening and say, yeah, we didn't spend anything on it except, routine maintenance, greasing an oil change or hydraulics or whatever. But the depreciation is worth 160 this year. Maybe next year, if we defer it 1 year, we're losing $40,000 on the trade. So are we saving money? But the key thing is the warranty. Like Joe might come back to us and say, yeah, there's been no expensive maintenance on it. Well, that's the point. That's why we're rotating it every 5 years, so we don't incur any maintenance on it. If he comes back and says there has been no maintenance, the plan's working. That's why we're doing this. So there is no maintenance on it. And the key thing for usually for banks or vehicles for using it was 5 years at key mark for depreciation. And I think it doesn't. I think it goes not proportional, but it goes down dramatically more after 5 year period for the value of it. I think the process we're doing is the best for the taxpayers, and it keeps the downtime minimum for our staff, and it's a key piece of equipment.
Thanks, Malcolm. Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, no, I just, through the chair, I'll meet us, come with the council tonight, I'll be ready to vote on it tonight.
And just, we do track each piece of our equipment and the cost separately, so we will be able to, I can print that off and take a look at whatever piece of equipment we have and the maintenance cost.
Okay, I think we've beat this to death, and it'll be a council tonight. Let's take a 7-minute break. Go back online so everybody knows. Listen.
Ryan's really on brand, his turquoise background, his.
Yeah, so that thing in the back.
That's a little sexy right now.
So the daycare is open up or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we're adding 3 more kids next month.
Oh, good. We'll be at time.
More kids to the daycare?
Next month, we're getting 3 more. So what's that bring the total up to? I think full time as of March 8th, but I think they got plans for more. I thought we had more, but apparently right at the beginning we did. So I'm gonna go drop in and see them all. So we're up to 8 now, or we will be in March. Yeah. Well, we only got licensed a week and a half for them years. Something like that.
I thought it was set up to 25 kids.
It was, but we only got licensing to open the thing, is what I'm saying, the week and a half ago. Right. So I think that's delayed a little bit of the active enrollment that's coming.
Okay. Let's get back to select finance committee at 10:40. Okay, Kelly, take it away again.
Okay, so that was A.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Seeing as how the bears back in the room, should we go back up to the top 8 today?
You know what I was thinking, that's a great point.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, can we just put that and circle back on other things that we have to do at the end?
Correct, because we might want to look at a reserve tweak, so let's just go through it, and then if we want to tweak anything on that with Terry here, I think that's a good idea.
Good, okay, thanks, Kelly.
Okay, so we're gonna just leap right into the sewer fund. So for the sewer and water fund, I've provided a summary of the revenues and expenses for the year. So sewer, the revenue is slightly down from last year, even though our rates, there's a 5 cents additional charge per cubic meter for sewer. The average residential home is paying, based on 200 cubic meters of consumption for sewer, $344 for the year. That's up from 336, so it's up 2.38%. So the average, the reason why it's down is there was, as you know, we've changed how we continue to build, then we waived some fees for RVs, then we, for the stratas, and then we also waived sewer charges last year for the houseboat company. So there's been a lot of fluctuations, but I feel like this 733 is a good accurate budget for 2021 for sewer revenues.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So those fees that were waived last year, so that's all done now, that's not
For which?
for the household.
Correct. So that was just in 2020 because of COVID. That cost us about $30,000 of revenue.
Okay, and to do with the two stratas, their discount is done now too.
Right, so in the bylaw currently, it's prorated based on their number of continuous occupants living up, and that was just for the 2020 year. As we were to negotiate and determine with our development services manager what they were going to be doing in terms of occupancy, and as you're aware, our staff situation in that department has not been steady, so we have yet to deliver on our side and meet with them in terms of how it's going to shake out the zoning. So for now, we will need to revisit that prior to the billing in July.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay, so revenue and then transfer from reserves, from own funds. This is to cover the debt payments. So we have about just under $1 million. In terms of our costs, most of them are relatively comparable. Our treatment plant, so this is the sewer treatment plant. We actually, our supplies have gone up quite a bit. The amount of chemicals required by MOE has gone up. Therefore, the costs associated with that are budgeted to go up as well. Everything else is pretty standard, other than the amount which is going to the reserves, which I'll talk about when I talk about the water reserves, because I've got them all on one page. So that's the sewer fund and the snapshot, nothing really surprising there. Okay, then we'll move on to the water fund. So this fund, we are generating more income, which is good. We need to be generating more income for this utility. This year, the increase to consumption is 10 cents per cubic meter, and that's it, as well as a $5 increase in the unit charges, which only goes to those strata lots. So the average resident pays in water $420 for water. So in 2021, it's $420 for water, $344 for sewage, total $764. So that's how much an average household will pay for water and sewer per year. And that combined is an increase of 3.8% from last year. Okay. So water is up from 400 to 420, so it's up 5%. Sewer is up 2.38%. Together it's 2.8%. I think it's reasonable, and we are going the right direction with the water. So I'm happy. And sewer is good. Our sewer, I'm happy with this spot.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I just skimmed through this, so you were planning on putting $159,000 this year in reserve for the water fund.
Yeah.
Okay, because we need to be a point of having $1 million when we have to replace those cartridges in the filters, which is what, 5 years away, possibly.
Yeah, we want this to be at least 300,000 a year. That's what we want that to be.
Okay.
Yeah, and we are working towards that. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so revenues, other than that increase, it's pretty standard. Some expenses are up and down. The treatment plant, I reclassed insurance from administration, and I increased the utility to better reflect last year's cost of hydro, those types of things. Let's see, that's the treatment plant. Distribution has been costing us a little bit more. So we allocated some more wages to distribution, and increase contract services to better reflect what we actually spent in the last couple of years. However, the same with our pumping went down a bit to better reflect prior actuals. So at the end of the day, it cost us, including amount to reserves, 159, about 1.1 million, almost 1.2 for the sewer. So definitely water is more expensive than the sewer. As we look at the reserves, so if we want to start with the sewer, we have a policy, 20 to 30% of our water pool and sewer revenue should go to reserves. Our sewer is within that amount, so 181 is about 24%, so it's right in the middle of where we should be. And when we look at our sewer reserve continuity with capital, it looks healthy, so I feel very comfortable with the sewer. Water, what I do like is this is going from 159, and I feel like this is fairly accurate budget, up to 295 in 2025. So we are increasing that, and our amount going into reserves isn't quite where we need it to be, but it is starting to get to where it needs to be. So that we're pointing in the right direction, which is good. Okay, so really that's it for water and sewer operations. Any questions on that before we cap?
Joe, go ahead first.
Thank you, Chair. So just in line with what we're talking about, fleet management and our asset management key as well. We have started the asset management process with our system, $15,000 set aside from one grant, and I believe it's another $50,000 grant applications just now to complete our asset management plan, which will fine tune this. Some of the stuff that Kelly was just talking about in there as well, just as I was having a drink. Our ferric amounts that we have, the amount of ferric we inject currently for the wastewater treatment plant has increased to try and bring us into compliance. But with the treatment that we're about to go into, the improvements we're about to go into, some of those will decrease. So the chemical allowance that we've got just now, what we're doing, will decrease as well. So some of these aren't going to be exponentially keep going up. We're trying to adjust these, bring the ferric amounts down, and the chemicals that we're using. So once we get the treatment in place, these will actually decrease. That's the likelihood of what we're doing just now, because we're actually overdosing on what we're doing just now, because we don't have sufficient treatment in place. So what I'm saying is once we get these pressure filters in place, some of these chemical treatment plant costs will come down as well. And that's what we're working towards, is they have increased year on year. It's just our point of clarification.
Great, thanks, Joe. Go ahead, Jeff.
So Kelly, it's correct that these two utilities are self-sustaining. There's no tax in that basically for the taxpayer.
Other than servicing the debt.
Yeah.
Which is now flat each year.
Yes, it's a line item.
Correct. Yeah, I would say water is not quite there yet. It needs a little support from sewer, and we'll talk about a little transfer between those reserves. But once that's done, in another few years, I'm feeling much better about the water fund.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
Everybody loves a good water discussion. Okay, so now we'll go into capital. So I've got 2021 budget, and then I've got a 5-year. We've already discussed this. This is just a summary for everybody's information. And if anybody wants to make any comments, changes, that's why we're here today. So I'm just trying to get this so it's everybody can see it. So this, once again, general fund, not water or sewer, just the general fund. Fire department, we have in the budget and funded from reserves, some modifications to the burn building for training, which was in last year's budget, not spent. Forward side by side of 25,000 in last year's budget, not spent, and then 20,000 for preparation for the generator on that building, which was in prior year's budget, unspent. So that's what we have in the fire department. Questions, or shall I move on?
Move on.
Okay. General government, you know what, I'm gonna try to make this a little bigger. Is there any way to make this thing so it's not floating around?
I tried to set it, I can't figure it out in 15 seconds or something.
No, all of it. So computer and server upgrades, it's really just computer, not server. 30,000, and this is the grant column, so this is where we're also using the COVID money for there, and council chamber audio visual, so there's 80,000 that is coming from the COVID money for that. Level 3 charging station, yes, we have it in again, it's being funded by grants of 100,000. Shuswap Healing Center, 500, funded by grants. This is for the starting the planning phase, as well as for the site cleanup, which is all eligible expenses under our grant. So that's what's gonna be happening there. Daycare, this is the remaining piece of the grant, which we've already almost spent most of that, so that's carried forward. Bio and heat facility, this is mainly grant funded, with 254,000 coming from taxation. So to total, and then we have land. So we have, this number is revised. It really didn't have a number preliminary. We had some discussions and around the 500 mark because things were moving. So right now, as it stands, we have it at 250, which is for the back half of 433, which we've not already acquired, which is 175, and then it leaves $75,000 for other work and planning that needs to be done for, I don't know, whatever, for the George Mackey works and stuff like that, any other work that needs to be done there. We've got an amount in there for that. And we do have a housing reserve that has, I believe, 60 or 80,000 in it, that if we need to do any more, we can top that up with that. So as it stands, that's the preliminary number that I have in there. Recreation, pathways and trails, we have 30,000, not designated to any specific trail, but in there last year, we did a little trail at 2 Mile, that money was used for that. Finlayson Park upgrades, this is for, we've got it in $100,000 to do, I think, one of the ball diamonds, and then we have another amount in a few years to do. 622 for multi-use sports complex, partially grant funded, partially reserves. This is per a grant application, which we have not received any word from on that one. Main Street Archway, this was last year's budget. It's for design, still in this year's budget. Mountain Bike Park, $100,000. This is coming from the recreation reserve that we had talked about earlier. This is in the budget, $100K for the next 3 years for the actual development of the bike park, capital costs. Campground development, new, I've got $100,000. We actually have a reserve that we've been putting money in for the campground, but we have about $106,000 in it. So that's good that we have that. And I've allocated money in there for any potential at Eagle River Campground if we need to purchase any right-of-ways or anything for access there. We've got some money in the budget for that. Finlayson waterfront upgrades. So this we've already spent 58,000 in 2020. So this is the remainder of 400 for some initial works and planning for what we need to do down in Finlayson. Boat launch area, funded from reserves, and the beach park washroom upgrades. This is our total budget is 677. However, we did spend 60,000 on initial archaeological works in 2020. So the remaining is in here, and it's funded from grant as well as DCC money. So that's beach park, and then we'll go down to roads, bridge. So we've got the Sicamous Bridge. 3.177 million, which is still the total project price hasn't changed. We'll be talking about the bridge lots here today, or later today, so we don't need to get into the details of that right now, but it's funded from grants and reserves. Home Culvert, 10,000 in there from last year. Bayview Stormworks, 100,000 funded from reserves that we talked about at a previous finance committee meeting. Main Street upgrades, 675. It's coming from reserves and a little bit of DCC. So this is the initial, Main Street upgrades is phased over a couple of years. This is year 1 works. And then also we have 450. So we have paving on Sicamous Road as well as Husky Frontage Mirror Road. So at the end of the day, our general fund, we have 9.1 million of capital projects potentially on the go for 2021, of which 3 million is funded from, I believe that's reserves, 5 million or 56% is from grants. 4.8, this is that 400,000 that you saw coming from the operating, that's that. And then we have 229 coming from DCCs, and 250 coming from borrowing. And that's the land. So that's the general fund year 2021 capital in a nutshell. Any questions, comments, concerns before we move to water and sewer?
Thanks, Kelly. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Just hats off to staff for our capital projects. 56% of that is their grant money. I know I didn't write any grants. That must have been staff. No, seriously, more than half our capital projects are funded because staff is aggressive and willing to apply for it and successful in getting grants. And so just compliments to staff.
Thank you. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, thanks to the chair, compliments to the staff, but also compliments to council. And you're forward thinking on all of these different projects and whatnot, and the impact it's going to do to this community. And yes, over $5 million for the grant funding, and the hard work that's gone into all of this is really amazing. The teamwork that's gone on within the boundaries of the district Sicamous office. So good on you all for this.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else? Good job. Carry on.
Okay, back to water and sewer. We are, whoops. Water and sewer. Okay, so we've got water capital and sewer capital, much smaller, very few works. We did a few larger projects in 2020, so 2021, because we don't have the funds in our sewer reserve. We're taking a little bit of a lighter year this year. We're finishing off, we have 30,000 left for the Silver Sands Road looping, so we have a little money left over there. Our main project is we are doing main upsizing on Main Street when we're doing the roadworks there. So that's budgeted to happen in 2021. And then we've got this prep work for generators at Babies and Seafair booster stations. That's been in the budget for quite a few years and just keeps on getting rolled forward. So clearly it's high priority. But it's there for when there's capacity to do it, it's there. So that everything is being funded from the water reserve. And then sewer, we have the remaining of the grants. We have 514,000 left of that sewer small communities fund grant we got way back in, I believe, 2014, 2015. We've extended it a few times, but this is going to be complete here in this upcoming year. So we've got so we've got some reserves, grant, and then a little, this is the last of our sewer DCCs. So we no longer have any more sewer DCCs. And then additional works of 350. So between the two, that should cover off what's left over at the wastewater treatment plant. Lift station pump replacements, we put that there because if a pump goes, we need to replace it. I move the money from reserves if it actually occurs. And SCADA upgrades, this is something that it's partly finished. It was budgeted last year for 40, we spent 15 on it to order the parts, and now they're just doing the upgrades now, paying for labor. So in total between these two, 1.2 million. Most of it is 70% is reserve funded, and 30% is grants. So that's it for water reserve.
So, I mean, maybe this might seem like a silly question, but I know that you're fine with the sewer and the water and the money that we're putting into reserves right now. Is there an opportunity right now for maybe we should look at increasing that just a tiny bit, especially with water?
Increasing what?
How much money was put into reserves?
I have put as much as we possibly can put in there without increasing rates more. So I have put every little penny that we have within our water and sewer fund. After we have our operating costs, it all goes into reserves. So the sewer fund is fine. It's the water fund, which we are increasing consumption by 10 cents a year each year and the unit charge by $5.
Okay. All right. It's good. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so then just to finish off capital, I'm not going to go through this in detail. This is for your reviewing pleasure. And this is just the 5-year capital plan for all of the departments within District of Sicamous. So you can, it's because the budget is 5 years, we need to look at this 5-year plan. Am I really proud of this 5-year plan? No, I think it could be better. I think we heavily put things in this year and we kind of ignore future years, so that's something that I want to work on. It's always been like that, but I know we can do better. But it's the best with the information that we have. It's always changing, right? So if you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them, but.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Only just the one question to do with, paving. Don't we have a, it's not a, we went through the process for valleys. And so, but they also apply for grants of certain things. Is there any grants of both A and A that we're doing?
Thank you through the chair. The only grants that we tend to get are reclamation works that are linked to water and sewer updates, and then they will recover some of the costs through that. We have asked Ali to go after a couple of grants for us, but today we have specifically back grants for. But the only way that we can recoup costs just now for asphalt repairs are if we do a water and sewer link.
Sorry, thank you.
Malcolm?
Excuse me, thank you. In campground line item, 100,000, that's for, I'm thinking our application to the Agricultural Land Commission to see for reconsideration. And we might need that for access. What about 2 Mile or waterway or Sicamous, whatever we want to call that, 2 Mile campground? Aren't we waiting for a business plan from our partners to see what costing of implications that has?
That is a very good point. So in this budget, we have 100,000 for campground development. It really could be used for whatever campground. I'm assuming it will be mainly the Eagle Valley campground. However, when we talked about the campground previously, it was to be in the Devport for the old waterway site campground. So if that progresses, then that might be something where we need to modify the budget moving forward. We don't know what that's going to look like, and that's what that $300,000 grant was before from the GOS to the Devport, was to help with that. So we don't really have. It's kind of been on hold. Things have completely changed. We've had very minimal communications, and I think maybe you can speak to where that's at.
So, through the chair, the 100,000 really is going to be to purchase the access for Eagle River and a couple of other ancillary type costs. We've had tremendous progress on that access road for Eagle River. We've got a new buyer of Lot E, the old bird property, and they're acquiring it, and they're prepared to dedicate us the statutory right of way to build that access road. So that's where those funds are dedicated to. Of course, pending the ALC rule. In terms of 2 Mile, yes, we're waiting for a revised business plan that's been prepared by Victor Cumming that has changed the original business plan that we paid for back in the day when we went after that potential purchase. It's been revised. It incorporates 12-month camping, not seasonal camping. It talks about sledding. It talks about RV sites, tent-only sites, and provincial campground sites. That's all I know. I haven't seen it. Once we see it, this council can make a decision. But none of those costs or contributions, et cetera, form part of this. It's just sitting there. We wait to see what the owner has to offer us in terms of a revised business plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Perfect. So then we'll go straight into reserves as it relates to capital. So this is, okay, so this is our, the majority of our reserves. So all we have a few other small ones, but these are the key ones. So the top line is what our opening balances is, what our opening balance is, what we are anticipating to purchase this year, this is just 2021, what we are contributing based on our existing budget, and then what our ending balance is. So general office, nothing is really going on there because what we would normally be spending from that, which is computers, we are funding it from COVID money. Because we're allowed to use some COVID money for that. So this is where I was thinking, when we look at the 5-year plans, maybe we could really trim some of this a little bit and maybe put it towards land. Or another one of your choice. Okay, so fire equipment, it pretty much is static for this year. Fire hall, so that's where we move some of the fireboat money into this fire hall, and I'm putting 20,000 a year in it for whatever it is, part of the future of the fire hall. Public works equipment, we depleted that reserve significantly over the last 3 years, buying some key pieces of equipment, so now we're taking a break here and we're contributing to it with no purchases coming out of that reserve. Recreation, this is the one you were talking about before, Council Almas. It starts at 766. We spent about 380 this year out of it, and I have the detail for those key ones coming up next. We put in about 100, so at the end of the year we're down a little bit. Roads, this is the one that looks healthy, but then can easily go down real quick with one project. So we start at 1.8. We're spending 1.1. We're putting in 230, so we're down at 878 at the end of 2021. Land. So this is what's left in our land reserve after we've, acquired the land that we have in the last little bit, and that's that 20,000 that's going in next. Campground, so we do have 104, we put in 20, we're budgeting that 100K. Housing, this is the additional 60,000 that I'm just keeping in my back pocket, depending on what actually materializes with the housing program. And then we have some money there to use for that. Boat launch, this is for the Finlayson boat launch specifically. So I've got money sitting in there, which we pretty much are budgeting to spend it all this year, or most of it. Salford Bridge, it will be depleted by the end of the year, but I just rounded for budget purposes. Community Works Fund, that we're also using to top up the bridge there. So I just want to bring it to the total. So we have 5.4 million. We're spending 3, we're putting in 620. So at the end, we're down. So you can just see, that our spends are more than our put-ins, but that's okay because our 5-year budget is heavy in 2021. But just keeping in mind that, it's not sustainable to continue like that. Okay, as water and sewer, so we have our water capital. So it starts at about 111,000. We're spending 310 this year, so we're contributing 127 because 30 is going into that operating one. So we're in the red at the end of water doesn't have enough. Water, just this operating one. So this is for, when I say operating, it's for things that are not their replacement, like larger repairs that do happen for water and wastewater. So this is that reserved for those filter replacements. So we're not putting enough money in there, but that will grow over time as we start collecting more. Sewer capital, this is the one that is quite healthy. We start at 2 million, we end at 1.5 or 1.6. And then our operating for one time, so this is for lagoon cleaning or truck waste or all those things that happen that are $50,000 or $60,000 a pop, but that don't happen every year. We pull from that, but we're not doing any this year. Overall for water and sewer, we have 2.4, we're spending about just under 9, we're putting in 340, we're at 1.9. So that's the water and sewer. And then I'll just slip over to this. This is this operating one we have for one-time operating costs. So we have 180. We're planning on spending 80 of that this year, and we're left with 100 at the end of the year. So that is the summary, and then I'll quickly, while it's fresh in our head. So this is just a little bit more detail, which I'm not going to go into, but it's so you can look at the 5-year reserves and exactly where they're going. So I'll just highlight key ones. Roads starting at 1.8. We basically are spending what we're putting in each year, not more from that. So bottom line, once we do these roads, we are just going to be able to maintain paving moving forward until we can get some more money in that reserve. The Main Street upgrades is gonna suck a lot of money out of that reserve, but it's something that needs to be done. So just so everybody's aware. And this is that recreation one that, kind of goes up and down, and I've got Mountain Bike Park coming from it, Finlayson Waterfront. There was, anyway, so this reserve kind of goes up and down. But once again, I find that our recreation 5-year plan also isn't very solid, because really who knows what we're gonna end up by doing, and I don't know about this Finlayson waterfront upgrade, or if we have any other docks or recreational stuff. So this reserve, to me, I feel good with. I feel good with the amount we put in, given what things we're gonna do. Our operating reserve, we don't annually contribute to this. So it just depletes each year. Maybe one year we might want to think of putting some more money in there.
So, yeah, Kelly, just a quick question, and maybe I thought we had decided, or we had talked about putting a lift station somewhere in Sicamous, like a dump station, sorry, for RVs. Are we looking at that? Did we put that in the budget? Was there consideration? No, we had a conversation about it, no consideration. Don't want to do it?
Through the chair, we looked at it, but I actually haven't looked at the physical sites that we've got. We are limited to a couple of sites that we've got just through the gravity means that we have in town. So we need to put it close to, we need to have come up with an agreement with somebody like the strip mall and have it located somewhere like that, because it's probably one of the better locations for it. But the conversation never pointed us in clear direction for a site. I know I've looked at a couple of locations around town, but there's nowhere that we could do it for under 100 grand, say 60 grand, realistic.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think that there's Michelle has one.
Yeah.
And I think that a dump station, if we get campground, is part of the campground project. So I'd suggest we wait until we see what happens with our campground, because we're gonna have to service it, so put one there would be easy to do, and hopefully they're there anyway.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I thought we were looking at some temporary RV parking for this year, because we may not go to a campground, but we might have those slopes and sections, so that's where I was going with that. Okay, thanks, Ellen.
Sorry, bringing back to reserves, guys. Okay, so here's the office one, and this is the one where I was thinking, see, it's kind of going up. We don't have to change the budget, I can just take some of this and I'll reallocate a portion to land, because I feel like we're sufficient. We have a new building. Yes, we have upgrades that need to be done, but we're on top of them. So this is one where I think we can make change. Fire equipment, this one goes into the red by the time we do our replacements of tender 5 and engine 6. So this one needs to continue with their contribution, so we're able to upgrade the engines and tenders accordingly. Public works equipment, this is the one where we have a pretty slim budget right now, so we're just trying to build that up. So we can buy the necessary equipment that we need. Water and sewer. So sewer, once again, we had a tentative Balboa lift station upgrade in 2022. But see, this reserve is pretty healthy. So I'm good with this. However, our water is in the red, and we also have specifically not put in water line upgrades that we know we need to do, recognizing that we don't have the funds to do it. So I'm thinking that at a near future council meeting, I'll get a resolution to move, and I just have to figure out how much I feel comfortable with, maybe 800,000 from the sewer fund into the water fund to top it up, so we can, or not to top it up, to, I don't want to deplete the sewer fund too much, but I do know that there's room in there to bring over here. So I will be doing either a $500,000 or $800,000 resolution to move from the sewer fund to the water fund.
And it's true, that's not a tax implication.
No.
So
It's money we've already collected and allocated. It's sitting in a bank account, and literally just moving. Yes.
So can we just pause for a second? I think Bob's got us around pretty quick. So can we circle back right now to remuneration?
Yeah, let's do that. That's great.
While Bob's still here.
Yeah, so the only real, other than the land reserve, was just discussing the council remuneration.
Correct. So Terry, just to bring you up to speed on what was discussed earlier, is that council has decided that they're not going to increase their remuneration this year. Council feels that all the time that you do put in, you should get a bump. I think that the number needs to be determined yet, but I mean, we want to get your input. And I also think that we are looking at perhaps need staff to come up with a plan on step remuneration for a new councillor moving forward. So we're going to put off our increase until next year. Okay, so Bob, do you want to share your thoughts?
Thank you through the chair. So, Mr. Mayor, I think all of us would love to bump you $30,000 for the work you do for the council, and we mean that. But I suggested that this year we would bump you 5, as much as we'd all like to bump you 10. But that was just my suggestion. Just being that we're in the middle of the pandemic and just that kind of thing. I think a lot of us would like to bump you 10 this year, but I suggested 5 just because in the middle of the situation we're in. But that's the discussion we have.
Jeff, go ahead.
I had no issue with 10. I also think that, because of the pandemic, that the mayor's actually put a bit more time out. And so, for the amount of time that he puts in and consistently in the meetings that he goes to, I have no issue with the bump to 10 at all. It's 0.1%. If we take ours out, it's 0.1%, correct, Kelly? So the mayor's 10,000 is 0.1. And
right.
So we're not talking about running on the taxpayer's basis to actually make a difference at all. You're talking the average person is $15.88, $15.88 increase on that. And we're talking about it's like $1.50. So I'm not losing sleep with it.
Jeff, Kate, Gordon?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. Terry puts in a ton of time and compared to us, and he's here every day. And I agree for sure.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I agree with 10. Do we need a motion or a resolution or something, Kelly? Or
Can we just hold off on that yet? So we haven't heard from Ryan yet, so we want to make a. Okay, thanks. Ryan, are you there?
Yeah, can everybody hear me good?
Yeah, go ahead.
In these tough times, I think that we need to be thrifty, and so for that reason, I think 5's the number that I support.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. And my opinion as well is unprecedented times. We're not taking any. I think it's optics as well. So, and yes, Terry, we all agree that you should get rid of more money because you did it more time, but I'm good with 5 as well. So, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I really can't comment on this too much because it's self-serving, as you can well imagine. So, whatever council decision on this, to me, it's really not about the money. It's more about the principle, about the hard work that this council does, each individual, and the results that we're getting. I mean, we just talked about a $5 million bump from grant funding and so forth, and I just think it's an amazing group of people, and you are deserving. And I know even when it comes to frontline workers right now and all the hard work that they're doing, I wouldn't want to see their salaries be decreased, but I imagine they should be increased. So at this time, I know COVID is a concern, but when I look at this, it's not just about me, it's about everybody that sits at this table, and including the hard work that our staff does and some of the recognition that we should have for them at the same time. So, Yeah, so it's entirely up to council to make a decision one way or another through resolution. And how to vote that, I don't even have to vote on this. So that's my take, thank you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Unfortunately, I have a meeting at 11:30, so if you're doing a resolution, I'm assuming it's up to council today. It won't be done here.
Yeah, so actually I need to amend a bylaw in order to do this, so as long as there's clear direction, it doesn't even need to. If you wanna vote on it, you can make a recommendation to direct staff to amend the council remuneration bylaw or whatever it is you wanna do, and then we'll bring that to the council, the next council.
So do we need to vote on an amount? Sorry.
You can make a recommendation so that the committee recommend that the mayor's remuneration be increased by dollar value in the 2021 year, and then that will trigger the preparation of the bylaw.
Correct.
So I think we're just talking the amount right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, but
Sorry, go ahead.
by what I'm hearing, it's split.
It sounds like it's split. So I think we do need to have a vote on it. But I just, before Bob leaves, I think it's a vote.
Okay, and I just wanted to point out with a council remuneration, nothing with council and with Terry, but 5,000 is 1.51%. If it's 35, it's 1.61% of the tax.
Okay, put it in perspective. All right, so let's go with 5,000. All in favor of 5? Oh, sorry. It doesn't matter.
It's kind of believe what the value is.
With the value is, so it doesn't have to be, okay, so 5. Ryan? 5 is it? Okay, so you can put
So you
5 and
can
bring
move
that
that.
to,
So the committee recommends the mayor's remuneration be increased by $5,000 beginning the 2021 year. Approve that?
What about the rest of council?
we've decided.
We all share it for you.
I'm sorry, sorry, he goes back and said, Terry, did you not hear?
Yeah, I'm not over comment for me, I'm done.
Sorry, when you came in, I said council is deferred this year, we're not
Oh,
taking.
okay, I'm
any.
sorry.
Sorry, I should have, so glad.
Is that moved by Councilor Seah? Is that seconded?
That's
Sure, I'll second it. Okay, all in favor? Okay,
Opposed?
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 No.
Well, here, I'm not opposed to the increase.
Okay, so it's a recommendation to staff to amend the bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and thank you, Bob, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
What time are we taking the photo?
What photo? Oh, the pink photo.
Can you wear your picture at 4? Yeah, we'll do it at 4, because you just go for 3. Oh, 3.
Sorry, guys.
3 o'clock is, and we have.
So we're back here.
3 o'clock.
2 or 3.
But we have to take a picture, so we got here at 4:03.
Be here for.
4:03.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Jeff.
See you later.
Okay, so that's pretty much it for reserves. Does anybody have any questions about all of our money that we have and all of our money that we're spending?
All of the money that we're spending.
Yeah, we'll all go.
Yeah.
You know what, money goes in and then.
Comes on.
Okay, so then at the end of the day, this, even though there'll be minor tweaks, this is what the budget will look like. I am not going to talk about it, but it's there for your information. If you've got a question, I'm happy to answer it. Okay.
Great job, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks. So we'll move on from that. All those millions of numbers just go boom into that one page. So this is just more information. So we have our tax amount that we have control over, but we don't have as much control over this. So this is the CSRD requisition. So it's going up by $14,000, which basically works out. But the parcel tax, for the watershed is going down by about $1. So it's at the end of the day, the average residential home will be paying $5 more to CSRD for these services. So if anybody has a question on any of these services, the arena is up, and Terry can speak to that. It's mainly they're putting more money in reserves for the building.
Go ahead, Terry.
That's what that is.
Yeah,
Can I
go ahead.
comment on that?
Yeah.
Because that's what the
Please.
meeting was about this morning was this projected requisition and the different requisitions between all the different areas within the CSR. And so there is a bit of an increase of $14,000, and that, the 13.5 there, that going into reserve for the arena. And 2,352 was discussed when it comes to a weed dump, when it comes to search and rescue, and some of the projects that they're working on right now. So it's quite minimal in comparison to all the other regions. We're on par. Some went down a little bit, some went up. Golden and Revelstoke more substantial, to the point of about $13, $14 per household in Revelstoke and Golden. And that has to do with some of the dynamics in regards again to putting money into reserve for future projects. So yeah, I thought the budget with the CSRD was quite conservative. I thought it was well done, and everybody was quite receptive to the budget with the CSRD. So it'll be a bit of a change for us. But then as we all look forward, with our injection maybe with the rec center and so forth, I wasn't uncomfortable. Kelly and I went over this, and we digested it, and Kelly seemed to be quite comfortable with it as well. So that's where it's at.
Kelly, I do have a question. Now that Carly's in place with the Tourism Advisory Committee, and I'm looking at the Shuswap Tourism at 29,000 and a half there, and the Film Commission at $2,000. So we're, 30 grand into Shuswap Tourism. Do we get 30 grand worth of value from Shuswap? And Carly could surely use that money now because she's putting together plans and programs to promote Sicamous and bring folks to our location. So I'm just wondering if we're thinking of what we're going to do with that in the future. And before you answer that, go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, thanks to the chair. That's been a concern of mine for quite some time when it comes to the issue of tourism. I think now that we have a mechanism in place when it comes to Carly and our I think that she's always, sits on the committee, which I'm really comfortable and happy about. And I think that she will see that we start getting value for our money when it comes to Shuswap tourism. I think for now, I think it's important that we stick with the CSRD and Shuswap tourism. It's kind of complicated based on what took place. When we got out of the FDL, they kind of clawed back a little bit of that money through Shuswap tourism. But I think there will be results, but it remains to be seen. Now in the hand for Carly. So yeah, $30,000 to see where it goes.
Sure, and maybe perhaps we could look at something like we pay for services, like anything that we do with the Shuswap tourism, maybe we keep that, have a look at keeping that money, and then we just pay for those services. If we're gonna go into their brochure, then we pay to go into their brochure. So maybe we could look at that as opposed to giving them $31,000.
So really good point. So Carly is very aware of how much we spend to Shuswap tourism. So now she sits on the Tourism Advisory Committee, and she is constantly being like, what are we getting here? And I think she truly is finding value in that money. And I think that's a great question. And I think when she reports to us next, we can ask her, what are we getting for that Shuswap tourism money? And she will be able to articulate that very clearly. She is all over it. Perfect. And she's working along with the regional district. So yeah.
And just want to make note of the milfoil control program, $26,500. You guys better hope we don't get mussels, because that's going to be like 1,200,000.
Yeah.
So just saying, we need to avoid out of control to this for sure.
And one other point on this, so this, Malcolm, is this is where if there's any cost increases for us running the rec center, it'll come from this, because we'll pay for a portion of it through our requisition with the CSRD as well as Airbnb. Okay, so that's for information, and then as well for information is just what we pay to the library, which is also a separate requisition, and I know it's really tiny. But at the end of the day, I believe it's actually going down for residential. Even though the tax requisition is up slightly, it's up from 129 to 133. It's going down by $1. It's going down from 49. It's going from 50 to 49. This is the 2021, so it's actually going down $1 per household. So CSRD about $5 per household up, library $1 per household down, and then we'll be just under 30. Oh wait, yes, and we will, because we'll be maybe 20, 28, depending on how it shakes out after I make a few little tweaks here. Okay. So before we get into boundary expansion, do we want, I think we've got everything taken care of. In terms of the general operations, so what we'll do is we'll modify the taxes for the change in council remuneration. I'll take a look at I don't move the money into reserves until the very end of the year. So we have the money allocated to go to reserves, and we'll change our tax base or tax, so I can modify that. Is there anything else you would like to see at this point prior to, and I know if something happens within the next meeting, I'll make sure it's captured, but so far, as presented, other than those changes, everybody seems okay with it.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, just one quick question. You didn't drill down in the details, and thank you for that. But in one line item, you had some amalgamated together for an aggregate total, but I think somewhere in there, was there still 5,000 for each family?
Yeah, there is 5,000 for each friend. Right. So that's immense. Yes, there is. It's in.
I'll take your word for it. Thanks.
I'd like to show you, yes, so additional library asset management, where's each family? There it is. Yes, 5,000. Okay, right? And can use a blue 10,000. Yeah. Approved.
Dodge that bullet. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so that's it really. So very excited that we've gone through that. And the last thing on here was we just wanted to have a discussion on boundary expansion. So just so everybody's aware, that budget included nothing for boundary expansion, nothing for the rec center, nothing for the 2 mile. If something happens with any of those things, then we can make an amendment moving forward once we know that information. If we were to make any changes for the boundary expansion, it would just be for the cost of the study really in 2021, if you want to proceed with it, of which I would fund it from that operating reserve, a portion from grant, maybe, and a portion from operating reserve. So I wouldn't make it come from taxes because it is a one-time type of study. I don't know if Jen wanted to.
Absolutely. So through the chair, this is just an overview of an estimation of the cost. So we did get a summary from True that's $55,000 for the study and about 330 hours of theirs. There would also be additional time for staff as well, which we've estimated to be about similar probably to 300 hours just to support True through public consultation, just background knowledge. So we'd like to put that opportunity cost as well, but that wouldn't hit the books, of course, as a direct cost. And so for your consideration, if you want staff to engage in this study, I've included the capital cost estimate, which is about $8 million. That is also a long-term financial application. I've included the expansion study from 2003, which it was not recommended to proceed. Now, of course, that was 20 years ago, and one of the main reasons was that there was opposition from residents. And then also, if they just included Hyde Mountain, it was to make it financially feasible, and we had about 450 units of development at $280,000 tax value to make it financially feasible. So in 2003, it was not recommended that to proceed with the proposal. And so I've included the minutes there for you from 2003. I've included the study, which it summarized, but that's not recommended. And so, well, absolutely, that was almost 20 years ago. It's valuable for council to consider if you want to proceed now. Have things changed significantly enough that it would be worth, not only the financial dollars, but also the staff time to proceed with this. It's not part of your strategic priorities. So just keeping in mind that if we're going toward this, there's going to be a lot of staff time that we're not directing to other strategic priorities. And I know I'm speaking quite bluntly here to council, but I just want, you know, it is a significant undertaking. And so, of course, staff would always be happy to follow through with your direction. But we just want to make sure that you guys have all the information you need before we would proceed with this. Thank you for allowing me to speak so boldly.
Okay, I think Mel can go ahead first.
No, it was on a different topic, so.
Okay, go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, thanks to the chairman. Thanks, Jim. So what is the importance of this? I mean, it's been a request from the stakeholders along the corridor that would like to see a boundary extension. So if we have that request, and I think we've had that request, I don't see a lot of signatures on the request at the state, but once we get that, and if we do get that, I don't think we have any option. I think that we have to do our due diligence on this thing. And I think that there is grant funding that's available to us to help us navigate through this. I know that Area C right now, and the CSRD is going through this, and Area F also going through maybe the same a challenging exercise. So that's how I see this. So I look at the options at this at the end of this report, that staff be directed to seek funding for a study on possible boundary expansion options. And I think that because there's been a request, I think we're going to be obligated to that request.
Thanks, Terry. And I agree with the mayor. I think that there has been a request and there is now interest. And it is coming from residents, and this is 20 years ago, and I think that things change over time, you know, and progress happens, and it sort of makes sense in the big picture. It's making sense for those folks over there, so I agree. I think that the trigger's been pulled. So, go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, if we can use grant money and through grant money, hire consultants to reduce staff's amount of time, workload. I think the mayor's right that it's in motion and we have to go through at least the preliminary stages of it.
Go ahead, Gord.
Through the chair, yeah, I agree. It's something that probably is going to take a little bit of time, but if we can find some funding for the study and go from there. Sounds like High Mountain is posed for a big change, and you know, you think about all the residents along the water that actually have septic fields, and I know in Alberta, any of the lakes there with the septic field, they don't allow septic fields on the water anymore. They all have to have pump tanks because they don't have sewer out in that area, in the areas around the lakes. So they all have pump tanks, and you know, this goes into our drinking water, and you know, something that maybe we can find some more grant funding and for environmental reasons. You know?
Ryan?
I'm inclined to be critical of spending any taxpayer money on this in these times. So for that reason, I guess it's critical. This relies on grants right now, and it would be great to see us all united along that side of Mirror Lake, and I could see it would mean a lot for the people on that side of the lake. But we're a small community, and we also can't take some of that expansion on our backs financially. So I'm cautiously optimistic of how things could go well in this situation, and looking into it.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Sherry, go ahead.
Chair, so I would like to encourage council that when we go through our strategic priorities at the council meeting tonight, to maybe bring this forward as a strategic priority, because I believe it's going to be a strategic priority without question, and it should be on our priorities list.
Thank you. Kelly?
Okay, I just wanted to comment just about the grant funding. So there is a grant stream for planning for this type of thing. However, if the grant is closed, it's not open right now. I said that in the email, they're not accepting any applications. It funds a portion of it, so up to 50% of the cost of it. So right now, even if we wanted to, for that specific thing, the grant isn't open right now. In the past, so the last time High Mountain paid for half of the cost of the study, maybe there's an opportunity to reach out to the residents who are wanting this done, maybe they are willing to pony up some money for this.
I agree. I think that's a really good idea. Okay, go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I think before we proceed, we should sit down with, the owner of High Mountain and see what his plans are and see if he's interested in the boundaries expansion as well. I know one of the developers that is over there is interested, but it'd be nice to hear from the owner. And also like whoever's speaking on behalf of the residents on the west side, have them come in and do those proposals.
Sure, I agree. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, I think the Shanty Cove has an association, so I think they should be, have a representative of their stakeholder group at that, some sort of, you know, Shanty Cove should be represented.
So go ahead, Gord. I was just gonna say, so how do we trigger this? Like, how can we start a conversation with those folks over on the west side who've already sent a request in to have the, to look at the boundaries? So how do we trigger that back to them and say, okay?
I would say we would hold just a public consultation with them, a direct invitation, obviously during COVID, we did this electronically. But just starting a conversation there and just having that buy-in. And this is just, again, where I just caution council that really, when we look at what the study was from 2003, it didn't go through if there wasn't support. So we really need to make sure that the support is there and the support is firm. Because that ultimately, it is the decision of the district, it's the decision of the province, and that's really what's going to sell it to the province, that we've got buy-in from all stakeholders, right? And that's financially feasible. So if we, staff are already seeking grant funding for this, we're pursuing what we can, we're looking at this. So if we could have a consultation meeting, right?
Yeah,
To make sure that's there.
Yeah, for buy-in and for funding as well for contribution. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you to the chair. So, so I understand what Dan's coming with this. So it is the responsibility of the province when it comes to the boundary extension, but it is our responsibility to take note that the recommendation and the request is coming from this group, and we should have that conversation with them in order to trigger this thing. Our responsibility is to do the study.
Okay, so. Yeah.
So for now, before, I'm hearing that you want this as a strategic priority, you definitely want me to put some money in the budget for this study. I'll fund it in a way where it's not coming out of taxes, it's either coming out of, maybe I'll do half grant, half, I'll say developer contributions. Maybe we can convince those players involved to fund up half of the cost of this. And we'll see how it transpires.
Sure, and then when we move it to a strategic priority, we get attached to the councillor, attach it to a portfolio, and then the councillor can start getting the formal, taking that form and getting it rolling. Okay, anything else? Okay. Good. Do you need anything from us for this?
I don't think so. I think, staff are working on that in the way we have been. And I think when we're ready to get a formal resolution from council to actually proceed with the proposal, that obviously be well informed and well ready to make that decision. So I think in the back end, we'll look at ways to have some consultation right now. And if council would have strategic priorities tonight, formalize that through a resolution, that it would be added as a strategic priority.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Kelly next.
And that's it. That's it. We have gone through, we kind of have an idea. We've got a tentative tax increase of about 1.51%. Don't quote me on that, it may change slightly. And the plan will be to public notify and have a budget presentation on the second meeting in March. I'm sorry, the date doesn't. But if something comes up between now and then, I will definitely keep you updated, and if you've got any questions or comments or concerns or want any more information on any level, I'm more than happy to. Or any member of public as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kelly, for doing such a. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Here's my question about our COVID fund from the district of Sicamous. Is there any funding left in that fund?
So that's that 927,000?
No, the 20,000 a year ago, remember?
The $2,000 grant.
Oh.
The $2,000 grant stuff, thank you.
That's a great question. So I think this year, so we just reallocated some of the budget from travel and conference to go to grants. It was, I think, 40,000, of which we spent about 38, I want to say, year to date. So in 2021, we've increased that grant amount. It's normally at 10, we've increased it to 20, so we could still accept COVID grants.
So it's still there, bumped up.
Yes, there's still extra money in for grants. It's a great question. Yes, more than normal.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the public is aware of that.
I think it's still on our website.
It is, we haven't really been pushing it, I was kind of waiting till make sure numbers got finalized, but I can start pushing it again now that we're.
And it is reduced. It was 40, now it's 20.
Okay,
So we don't have as much.
okay, thanks, Evan.
No, I just want to clarify, for the public and council. I get requests almost every week since January, do you want to renew your membership? The answer is no. There's no need to review a lot of memberships during these times. So this is another example of belt tightening. There's no conferences, there's no travel. We've said no to all those things. For example, LGMA still is providing online workshops for staff and local government, but there's a fee. We're not participating in that this year. And FCM is asking for memberships. There's no FCM conference this year. You know, if we have a question, we can reach out to FCM, but you start adding up these memberships and conferences, all those savings are going back to this and replenishing this fund, or it's available for council. We're not budgeting anything really for 2021. We'll get it to last year. Thank you.
And that includes Silga as well,
Selga,
correct? Like we're not, is Silga going ahead this year?
with a virtual conference,
Yeah.
I don't know, they could be.
I'm sorry, Terry.
Yeah, no, Silver's going ahead, but it's all virtual. There's also a cost to it. If you want to join Silver, and they've got keynote speakers, a whole list of it, whatever. I haven't made a decision as to whether or not I'm going to participate in it. As I look at it so far, there's a couple of speakers that are kind of, I'd be interested in, but at this particular stage, I would almost say that I'm not ready to participate in it for the cost. I don't know there's going to be that much value in it. That's the whole thing. I'm just trying to find out, but I know it's going ahead.
Okay, so the money that we use will go into that fund, or don't use there, will go into that fund as well. And how do our resolutions get moved to Silga? Like, is somebody going to speak to resolutions at Silga, or they just get electronically forwarded, or how does that process?
They have to be submitted with a background report, so staff are finishing those up and we'll be forwarding them along this week. And then at the actual conference, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Because I think there's 3, right? There's a snowmobile club, 2.
Potentially 3, yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else? Anyone else? Good. Kelly, thank you. Thank you very, very much. We've got 7 minutes here if we want to ramble on before it. It's early. Okay, let's recommend that the Select Finance Committee meeting for February the 24th, 2021 be adjourned, time being 11:50. Terry, Ward, all in favor?
Good job, Colleen.
Thank you.